How's it going, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. We have a lot of great stuff to talk about today. The Mavs got their first really good win of the season against a very good Denver Nuggets team at American Airlines Center. We're going to talk about KP continuing to play excellent basketball, the chemistry between him and Luka, Jalen Brunson continuing to strengthen a Sixth Man of the Year case for him, and a lot of other things. So we appreciate y'all tuning in. Let's get it going.
Hi, this is Luka Doncic.
Can he get it away in time on the step back? He does. He hits. He hits. And the Mavericks have won the game. Luka Doncic with a 30-footer to win it at the horn.
And you're listening to the Mavs Step Back Podcast.
Now, the only thing wrong with that intro video is that Matt Galatson is not able to join me today, so didn't have time to edit that part out. But I am joined today by a good friend of the pod. We are on Twitter all the time talking all things Mavs. It's Kirk Henderson from Mavs Moneyball. They have a ton of high-quality work over there via writing and podcasting. Be sure to go over there and check out everything they do. You can find him at Kirk Serious Face on Twitter. Kirk, how's it going, man? How you doing the day after that great win over Denver?
I'm good. It was a good win. Halftime things felt a little bleak. Third quarter things didn't really feel great. And then Denver stopped being able to score for just long enough for the Mavericks to take the lead really quickly. And they were able to hold on. And, there's a lot to talk about in that game. I feel like Coach Jason Kidd had been fairly slow to make adjustments. And that game, he was not. And it was fun to see because, losing that game wouldn't have been the end of the world, but it would have been frustrating because they haven't really beaten a great, a good to great team yet. And that was a key win.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of people say, well, they were missing Will Barton and they were missing Michael Porter Jr. and they were on the second night of a back-to-back. But, when the Mavs played the Nuggets the first time and they got blown out in Denver, they were also on the second night of a back-to-back and they didn't have KP. So, I mean, it goes both ways there. Sure. And they were playing the altitude on the second night of a back-to-back. So, it goes both ways. That's the nature of the beast in the NBA. And regardless, it's a good win because when you have the reigning MVP in Nikola Jokic and you don't have any bigs who have even a hope of stopping him right. offensively, any win over the Nuggets is a good win. So it was great to see, especially considering that the Mavs scored 14 points in the second quarter. Just a complete stinker of a second quarter. It was awful. Like that they were able to overcome that is amazing to me. And the offense continues to look a lot better than what it did in the early part of the season. The chemistry between Luka and KP specifically is what's very encouraging to me because, KP, he's got it going offensively. J Kidd and Luka have made a very big effort at the beginning of games to get him the ball and try to get him going and keep him engaged from the jump. And so far that has worked out well. He's there's a couple of defensive lapses. We saw it last night. There were a few plays when Bol was in the game where it made, he made KP look silly for a little bit. But I think it was you that pointed out on Twitter that KP didn't let that get him down. He just kept going after that. And that's what you like to see from him. That kind of determination, that kind of play from him, being engaged throughout the entire game is what this team needs from KP. And if he continues to play like he has, then, all those lofty preseason expectations are, probably going to be realized if he can stay healthy.
Well, it's, I want to level this thought with understanding I'm looking at the big picture. But if we're going to be quite honest with ourselves, going back to the start of the 2020-2021 season, we really didn't see Porzingis respond very well to adversity. It was one of the kind of consistent criticisms of how he would sort of go into a shell or pout or wouldn't really play very hard. So the fact that he got worked by Bol was pretty frustrating. Bol had only played 16 minutes the entire season. Yeah. And he went in and frankly kicked KP's ass for a minute or two. And that KP bounce back is pretty important because it's not so, there was another play. I talked about this on my show last night. He got Porzingis on the left wing and not Porzingis. He got Jokic on the left wing and drove left to the basket. Jokic blocked him. It was kind of one of those things where I'm like, oh, KP, why are you doing this? Jokic blocked him. But instead of trying to throw up another shot, he collected the ball back and then passed it out, and Brunson made a really nice play. And it's the sort of calmness that he's playing with that I'm really, really enjoying. I just saw this just crossed my timeline, and I think it's really very relevant to our discussion because you said that, they're looking for ways to keep KP involved. KP is also doing a good job of not doing the things that drive us crazy. He said, Mike Prada at Mike Prada NBA says, I love how much Kristaps Porzingis moved off ball last night. When he stands still, seeks out shots, or tries to post smaller players, he makes himself ineffective. But when he moves around, when he finds pockets of space and turns his speed and quick release into strengths, he plays well. And that was what he's been doing for 2 days in a row. I mean, I really love his shot chart. He took a few more long twos yesterday, but he's not subsisting on a diet of long twos like it's 2005. I've been really impressed with the little things that he's doing, and that I don't want to say he's accepting a role because that feels like talking down to a star player, but he's playing a really specific brand of basketball right now that is helping. And I was just delighted because I honestly expected he does not play Jokic well historically.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how he's playing right now. And, given the stuff he's doing, he's not just a jump shooter. He's not just, standing there shooting threes or, a lot of the time earlier in the season before he had his back tightness issue, it was a lot of force feeding him in the paint, and he was taking these horrible fadeaway shots over defenders that he should probably be trying to back down, if anything else. But that he's not just taking those 3-pointers and he's pump faking and he's able to drive to the rim and do some more stuff like that. It sets up stuff like what we saw towards the end of the game last night. And look, I'm not saying that KP is going to be this guy that's throwing these kind of passes all the time, but we had this one instance where he gives it to Luka. Luka jabs, fakes his man out, gives it back to KP, and KP just threads the needle between Jokic and Aaron Gordon, and it ends up in a goaltend for Luka on a layup. That was incredible. That gave me chills watching that. I'm like, we have never seen this kind of connection, at least that way, KP to Luka.
And it's really it's really a credit to both of them because, frankly, Luka has a tendency to let the ball stick in his hands, and so does Porzingis, and they pass the ball back and forth to each other twice in less than a 7-second span, and what do you know? You got an easy basket. It is impossible to defend the ball when it's moving that quickly.
Yeah, beautiful basketball, and that's the thing I've really noticed these last couple games. Even against Chicago, it broke down at the end of that second quarter, and they weren't really able to recover from that lapse. But even going back to the Chicago game, just the way they're moving the ball around now compared to how it was at the beginning of the season, you can feel it starting to become a little bit more fun than what it was. It's not sticking as much. It's not just a drag every game. And I think they're really starting to carve out an identity for themselves. I think, at the beginning of the year, Jason Kidd said that defense was going to be the main thing. And sure enough, so far, in my opinion, that, they've stuck to that. That seems to be a very real thing. They're playing well defensively. J Kidd, he ran out a lineup last night. I think it was to start the fourth, if I'm not mistaken, where he had Dorian Finney-Smith at the 5. And the entire lineup was versatile. They could switch anything. It gave the Nuggets fits. So that's the first time we've seen an adjustment like that. Dwight Powell, who's averaged 24 points per game in the previous sorry, not points per game.
If he was averaging 24 points per game, he would be really excited.
Yeah, that would actually justify starting him if that was the case. But 24 minutes per game in the previous 11. And then these last 2, he's averaged around 16, 17 points per game. So I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's an actual adjustment they've made. I've said it on the last couple of pods that DP in moderation is best for this team. Too much DP and the Mavs get drunk. So,
sure.
I really like the way it's trending right now. The team, I think if before this season, if we said, okay, after 13 games, this team's going to be 9-4, they're going to be third in the West, especially compared to last season when I think they started off 9-14 last year. So, I mean, this is like almost bliss. Nice. If you hadn't watched the first handful of games, you'd be thinking, man, this team's pretty good. And, they're going to continue growing from here. But where are you at right now from just like an overall morale, optimism, pessimism? Where are you at right now with this team based on what we've seen?
I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, we've talked about this online, and anybody that can look at the schedule can see what's coming. These next 6 games are going to be very tough. I've been trying to determine what sort of the bar will be for me, because these teams are frankly really, really good. And, when you're all on the road, it's going to be a little difficult. So it's like at the moment, I'm feeling very cautiously optimistic, understanding that you bank games so that if you have a rough stretch, it's weatherable, if that's a word. I will say that it's one of the things I'm very curious about. And like one of the things Rick Carlisle did, which drove me crazy, is he would find something that works and then either beat the crap out of it or go away from it entirely. And so last year they didn't run any, like they ran very little Luka KP pick and roll. And that's what we're seeing a fairly healthy diet of. And Josh and I were talking about this, I can't really think of a good reason for them to go away from it. Like teams need to stop it. One of the things we didn't even talk about that I really would like to emphasize in Porzingis' role is him as the roll man last night made a couple of really delightful plays off of the pick and roll when they were doubling Luka really high. And when Powell gets the ball there near the free throw line, it's like, must do something. Porzingis like kind of calmly surveyed. He spun. He made a pass to, I want to say it was Brunson, who then kicked it to the corner on one of those traps. And it's just like, that's the sort of thing where if Porzingis can even be a functional short roll man where he doesn't turn the ball over, where even if he doesn't make the right play every time, but if he's doing something and the ball is still moving, I think the Mavericks are going to be really hard to play against, because if you get the Mavericks in a 4-on-3 situation, they should be able to score most of the time with the offensive guys they have on the floor. You talked about how Powell and Dorian Finney-Smith are playing less, or at least how Powell's playing less. Dorian Finney-Smith is also playing less. And I love Dorian, but the Mavericks ask too much of him and have put him in situations this year where through the first 12 games of the year, he had as many turnovers as he had in the first 24 games of the previous year. Like you can't put him in these situations he's just not good at this stuff. So by figuring out who's good at what, and I think there's a lot of little stuff that they can continue to build on. And, with Maxey being out of the lineup, he adds another piece that can come back in. The depth with that Bullock brings, and then Frank Ntilikina brings, just adds just this little like margin of versatility that they're able to play with to try some new things that they just weren't able to last year.
Well, and how much validity do you think there is to this? Because I've seen Matt and we've talked about it in the past, but Jason Kidd, he could have watched as much film as he wanted to on this current Mavs team before he came here, and he could have, seen what Rick did with the team in the postseason the last 2 years and all that stuff. But, is there something to, he doesn't know these guys personally. He wanted to maybe experiment and see if these guys could do a little bit more. Like you said with Dorian Finney-Smith, and then after he's seen how it works out, okay, well, maybe we don't need Dorian doing step back threes and trying to dribble as much as what we had him doing. I mean, is there something to that? I mean, can we really knock him that much for attempting to get more out of these players, or was there already enough evidence where it's just like, okay, you shouldn't have been doing that in the first place?
It's a good question.
Because I can see it from both sides, honestly.
I mean, I think you could make the argument that it didn't matter because they've won the games they were supposed to win, and then they've lost the games that they were supposed to lose. Like that's how it's been up until last night, where that was the first game they've won where they weren't favored. So I'm not. what gives me some good feelings is that they're not continuing to slam their head into the wall. That was one of the things that's been painful for us for years is we would watch Rick Carlisle just keep trying Dwight. And it's like, well, Dwight doesn't have it right now. Like, what are we doing? And so for the Mavericks to see that maybe less is more with both of these players, they'll each have their moments during the year. Like Dorian always comes around. We have a pretty lengthy track record of that at this point. Powell, I don't understand the attachment to. He's not even setting good screens anymore because they keep calling him for offensive fouls twice a game. I don't blame him. To answer your question, I don't blame him. It was worth trying, but now I think we've seen enough of some of this stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's reflected in the box scores with, like I said, these last few games, given how some of these guys' minutes have decreased. And, when Maxi Kleba gets healthy and comes back, maybe Powell doesn't even start anymore. Maybe they put Kleba in there with KP, which I would be ecstatic about, anything like that, or even, putting Reggie Bullock at 3 and moving Dorian Finney-Smith over to the 4, something like that. It might not. Dorian, he's going to get overpowered a lot if he's in that position, but, it gives you a lot more offensive versatility. And, it's like we saw last night and in the San Antonio game when you have KP at the 5 with some of these lineups, you have Luka, KP, and good wing defenders who can knock down threes. I mean, that's really the way to go for this team. It's been delightful to watch. I'm super excited about it. Having KP on this level right now and him going as good of an offensive level as he's on, it really gives the Mavs room when other guys aren't on. Usually when Tim Hardaway Jr. starts out as cold as he did last night, and I think by halftime he hadn't hit a 3 in like his last 6 quarters. He was like 0 of 7 or 0 of 8 or something like that. And, typically when that happens, because there were times last year, and I think most of the time last year where he was the team's second best player and not KP. So when he's off, when Dorian Finney-Smith isn't hitting threes, when, maybe Jalen Brunson doesn't have it one night, which has been rare because he started out this season incredibly too. He's a 6th man of the year candidate, in my opinion. But when KP's going the way he is, it gives the team more room for that. And to Tim Hardaway Jr.'s credit, he finally got it going in the second half of that last game. He ended up shooting 8 of 14, had 19 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists.
It was mostly in the fourth quarter. He had 13 points in the fourth.
13 points in the fourth, had a run out transition dunk, roared at the crowd. He really got it going again, and it was great to see. And then Jalen Brunson had 17 points off the bench. But one guy that I want to get your thoughts of, one of the guys I want to get your thoughts on that we haven't talked about yet is Frank Ntilikina, because the Mavs signed him. He's on a 2-year minimum deal. We knew what he could do defensively, but he shot really well from 3 last season, but it was in very low volume. So we weren't really sure what we were going to get from him this year. And he's just been a very, very pleasant surprise and sticking in the rotation so far for Jason Kidd. And he's playing excellent defense, just like we expected. He's hitting down corner threes and even had a top of the arc 3 last night in timely moments too. It's not just it's not just stuff that doesn't matter. He's playing a vital role for this team off the bench. And I just want to get your thoughts on, where were your expectations for him versus how he's performed so far?
I mean, I didn't have any. And, teams that are built the way the Mavericks are, where they have some guys that are owed a lot of money, need to find guys like this every now and again. This isn't a 1-for-1 comparison, but like the Yogi Ferrell thing from several years ago, where he just kind of came out of nowhere and helped the Mavericks win a few ball games. Trey Burke in the bubble, good example. Trey Burke since, not so much. But you got to find guys at low-level contracts that can outplay what their deal is. And Frank, to date, is certainly on pace to do that. I really like what he brings in terms of energy. I find any sort of offensive, because like his shooting numbers are actually pretty bad. He's like shooting very low on twos, and he's doing okay from three. But what do we expect him to do? Like I want him to hit. I want him to hit 1 in every 3 3-pointers, and that's gonna be good enough. Like that's just fine. It's an added bonus. That 5-man group that you talked about that started the fourth. Frank was really effective and at least fun to watch in that because he switches onto everybody. He doesn't really back down from challenges. He's really aggressive. I think a lot of us are really into him is because he does a lot of the stuff that Dallas fans hoped Josh Green would be able to do in some respects, and just so far hasn't. Frank is a lot of fun, and I think the different lineups that he plays in, it's going to be interesting to see what they can get out of him. I seem to the level of trust that they have in him as a team early is nice. Like guys are passing to him for shots. They don't mind if he's willing to take guys off the dribble. It's been good to see. There's a couple of guys on this team who I'm not letting my expectations rise at all. I want to be pleasantly surprised every time they do something nice because it makes games like last night all the more enjoyable because we went through some of the negatives like Porzingis got worked. Luka honestly played bad.
Yeah.
He was whiny. He was, and so you need these sort of marginal contributions to add up and overcome that sort of stuff. And we could see definitely by the end of last season, the Mavericks just didn't have the horses to do that sort of thing. So this is nice.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of hard to believe that Frank Ntilikina is still only 23 years old. And I mean, he's a former lottery pick. And you look at like where the Mavs started with Dorian Finney-Smith, who was also 23 years old when he first started with the Mavs as an undrafted free agent. And you think about how far Dorian has come personally from those first couple of years where I think a lot of fans were thinking like, maybe this guy gets cut in training camp to where he is now as a 3-and-D pretty good role player. I have a lot of optimism for Frank Ntilikina specifically because I think there was a lot there even when he was in New York. I just think it was kind of a weird fit for him, and especially when you're playing with a guy like Luka and you have KP going the way he does, the way he's been going these last couple games, it makes things a lot easier for your role players. And I think he's just thriving right now, and I'm excited about it.
Yep.
One more thing here, Kirk, and then I will let you get back to your day. But Matt and Fish, I kind of, I don't know. I won't say I annoyed them, but I started another pipe dream thing yesterday. I can't help but think about it. Nikola Jokic, he's good friends with Luka. He's good friends with Boban. I thought he had a team option going past 2023, but that's not the case. He signed a straight 5-year extension, so he's got this season and he's got next season. So that's my next big pipe dream. The money is the biggest hurdle because, I mean, like Matt mentioned, there's really not a reason for him to, decline a supermax contract from Denver. But I think if we're going to have these kind of lofty dreams about the Mavs adding a true number 2, which KP has shown flashes of, but it's never been consistent, then I think the Jokic idea has a little bit more – what's the word I'm looking for? I would be a little bit more optimistic about that than I would be the Giannis stuff, because with the Giannis stuff, we were just kind of hoping that Luka would forge a relationship with Giannis. And I mean, they have an okay relationship, but it's not
it was
like
basketball. It was like a basketball and timing thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But with Luka and Jokic, I feel like they legitimately have something there because at the last 2 All-Star games, they're riding on the bus together. They're always rubbing shoulders. They were eating dinner together in the Orlando bubble. I don't know. I mean, am I crazy there? I mean, if yes. I'm going to – and I'm not saying –
keep going.
I'm not saying that should be the strategy, like the overall strategy like it's been in the Donnie Nelson era where they just put all their eggs in one basket and, they make moves ahead of time to save cap space. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they need to monitor something like that. And if the opportunity presents itself, then you pounce on it. So,
of course,
I mean, I think that would be an ideal running mate for Luka.
Well, I mean, the at the moment he is significantly better than Luka. How's that for a take? Like, I mean, he's the MVP.
Yeah,
there's no running mate involved here. But here's kind of the optionality for this. If you're being so, they have Jamal Murray, who is currently rehabbing an ACL, who I think is one of the most underrated guards in the league. You have Michael Porter Jr., who just signed the contract similar to Luka's, but he's probably not going to hit all of the thing. It's a $170 million contract. Then they have Jokic. Like, they are locked in with and then they have Aaron Gordon, who is just I mean, he's what Sean Marion, like he's this generation Sean Marion, in my opinion, if he keeps playing in this role. If their team was healthy right now, they'd be destroying people, because Will Barton as well. They just have depth and they're very good. So I think the any sort of challenge with that is, I think it might be earnestly going the other way, where Jokic is like, hey, come play with me. We have better, and they have more pieces to theoretically send back. Now, I understand what you're saying. It's always worth keeping an eye on whether somebody would be happy or unhappy or wants to change pace. The Mavericks, as kind of fans have slowly figured out, because they had to trade 2 draft picks to get Kristaps Porzingis along with the draft pick to get Luka. We've been really, really hamstrung on any sort of trade front for a long time,
which is odd, because they didn't have to trade that pick for Luka. They could have just sent Wesley Matthews for Kent Bazemore, but
which Cuban vehemently denies. He's basically saying Mark Stein's reporting is bad, and I don't know. I'm just going to go out on a limb here and not believe Mark. Who knew? But it's like, when you're hamstrung like that, you get out from under this pick 2023, and then you have your picks after that you can actually move. And so it's like, once the Mavericks get to that point, I think that Luka will be, I guess there'll be 3 years remaining on his deal at that point. I can't do the math. But there's going to be a lot more. We're all kind of annoyed that the team has stuck with this group, just as kind of a big picture look at the Mavericks. Yeah. But once they have some more flexibility, I really do actually think they'll make some trades. Like, I think they'll make some trades this year.
I do too.
With what's working, it's like, we saw some people chat, like, there was all sorts of like straw man arguments last night of people. You need to say you're sorry for crapping on KP. We're not going to trade any of these guys. And it's like, didn't we do this in March of 2020? Like, I've been here before. Like, you have to look for ways to improve your team. The end. Like, let's just be happy that I'm very happy that all these guys look good and are building something. Like, they still don't look great. That's like something we got to kind of emphasize here. They're 9-4
without looking great. Yeah.
and that's kind of got to be the tagline for our discussions, because even if they get kind of walloped these next 6 games, we've had this chunk of time where they've shown some areas where they're going. And so, to answer, to circle back about your question about 2020, with Jokic, I don't see it at the moment, but I also think that if we understand that relationships matter, like Kyle Lowry basically, going to Miami way ahead of time, that's how these things happen, is these guys decide it and make it happen. I don't know enough about Jokic. I know that he strikes me as like one of us, in the sense of, he just seems to want to play basketball and then go home. Like, it's like, what makes him happy? Like, his horses, he's a new dad, and it's going to be interesting to see. Like, they're one of my favorite teams to watch, because of kind of the versatility that they can play with. So, if things go belly up for them, there's always that chance, because like, he's a guy that's entering his true prime, and he's going to want to make the finals and going to want to be an NBA champion. Like, he wants to be one now. So that's always worth paying attention to. But I just see it at the moment. It's just very difficult to see, because they've gone all in. So,
yeah. And I mean, it's like, I wrote about this the other day too, but in the NBA, in my opinion, your 2 biggest driving factors is, 1, money. That's up here. It's hard. I think Kawhi Leonard and Anthony Davis are the only 2 players to actually turn down Supermax offers, which resulted in them being traded. But, everyone else, when they've been offered that Supermax, it's like, yes, now, immediately, give me the money. And then below that, the next most important thing is the relationship aspect of it. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see how it goes. You know how I am, Kirk. I'm going to talk my way into this with every little hug that they give pregame. And,
Sure.
at All-Star weekend this year again, we'll monitor that stuff too. But I'm really interested in seeing how Nico Harrison does during his first full season. He came in like a month or so before free agency this year, didn't have anything to work with draft-wise. So I'm interested in seeing how he approaches this season, how he approaches his first trade deadline. I'm interested in monitoring situations like in Boston with Jalen Brown, or to a lesser extent Marcus Smart, stuff like that. But overall, I'm very happy with where this team is at. And, like you said, to be 9-4 after not playing the best basketball at times, it's a great feeling. It's a lot better than starting out 9-14 like they did last year and having all the COVID stuff and KP coming back late. And it's been a lot of fun. And is there anything else you want to add to this before we take off here?
Not at the moment. I'm going to be really interested to see Jalen Brunson's play the next 4 games, because the two teams we're playing 2 teams in the next 4 games, actually, and then you put in the Cavs as well. So
a lot of length,
and Denver, frankly, frustrated Brunson at times last night with their length, and these other 2 teams, in my opinion, have more. So I'm going to be really interested to see what he can bring and do, because he didn't play much against Clippers last year, and I'm sure he has something. He feels like he has something to prove. So that's going to be what I'm looking forward to the next several games. I might be saying this more for me than for everyone else, but the key to the next, basically games to the end of November is to not overreact. Yeah. Everyone remind me of this when I overreact.
Well, I mean, look, sometimes, people need to realize that when you're watching games and you're in the heat of the moment, and then you're doing immediate recaps and, letting all of your thoughts out there. Come back and listen in a few days when things have simmered down. It's easy to overreact, but that's what we do. That's what everybody does. And it makes for good content. So
it does.
But yeah, I was thinking the same thing about Jalen Brunson last night. I was thinking, man, they're really bothering him, and
then he has 17 points. Yeah, I was like, how did that happen?
Yeah, 8 of 12 from the field, 17 points and 6 assists. So it's like, okay, well, I hope he does that against the Suns and the Clippers. But
I just think he was missed. Like of his 4 misses, each one was like really ugly.
Yeah,
like it wasn't like a typical like one. He hit it was a 3-pointer. No, it was like a wing 2-pointer that hit the side of the rim. It looked like a bad Dorian shot, and I was like, that Jalen Brunson. So so that sort of stuff just sticks out. But yeah, I'm really excited for these next several games. Also, I'm really excited that we don't see a back-to-back till like early December. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's so great to have a full-length season and not having to cram in all these back-to-backs like it was last year. But Kirk, I appreciate you joining me, man. Before we take off here, tell the people once again where they can find all of your work and all of your co-workers' work.
So if you want to come to MavsMoneyball.com, check out, we try to have a couple of things every day, though we're kind of hitting that we've gotten past the initial burst of the season, so everyone's kind of tired. But, there's a lot of game day coverage there, a lot of, we have a variety of people that have very, very different takes, which is fun because you don't want to all read from the same theme. If you want to hear me, Josh and I do a fair number of podcasts on the Mavs Moneyball podcast feed. I also host a regular green room called Group Therapy after the games. Green room and these live audience shows, and Dalton can attest this, they're really fun. And if you think they're not for you, you're wrong. They're for everybody. Like, it's nice. It's our Jeff Skinwade made a comment on another podcast a couple days ago just about how like toxic social media can be, and he's not wrong. But I will say with like some of these sorts of shows, just because you're actually speaking with other people, it lifts that element of negativity, even if you're saying the exact same shit. It's really something. So, and I can't recommend it enough.
It really is group therapy. Like, and even if you haven't, if you've never talked into a microphone or into a phone on a live show or whatever, who cares? Join it. get your frustrations out there, get your happiness out there, whatever it is, because even after a Mavs loss, I can attest to this in our own rooms and yours, Kirk. Even if you start off in a bad mood, typically you end those rooms in a great mood.
Right. Like I made a really extremely inappropriate joke, so I'm going to tell it again. I asked if Dorian Finney-Smith's dribbling was like a Make-A-Wish thing or something. So I'm like, why are we still doing this? What is happening?
Oh man, I missed that one. That's pretty funny though. Well, Kirk, again, I appreciate you coming on and talking with me today, and it's good to do this midday for me. And I'm glad you were able to carve out some time. And like you said, go check out the Mavs Moneyball podcast, subscribe, go read their work over there. Come read our work over at DallasBasketball.com, and make sure to subscribe to the Mavs Step Back Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you've seen it in the bottom right corner the entire time. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and put your Twitter ad or Instagram ad, some kind of social media way of us contacting you. And it enters you for a chance to win a Mavs Step Back t-shirt. So be sure to do that. Leave a review. And guys, we appreciate it. Y'all have a great rest of your week. I'll probably be on here at least one more time before the weekend, and then I'm just going completely off the grid for about 5 days. So I appreciate it, y'all. Y'all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.